Picture this: you walk past someone every single day. They're invisible to you, just part of the scenery, part of the background noise of your life. But what if I told you that person holds secrets that could change everything? What if they possess talents so extraordinary, so unexpected, that discovering them would shake the very foundation of everything you thought you knew about potential, about worth, about who deserves to be seen? This is the story of a woman who spoke 9 languages fluently while the world saw her as nothing more than a janitor. And the day her secret was discovered, it didn't just change her life, it rewrote the rules of an entire company. She was mopping the lobby floor until the CEO heard her speak Mandarin, Spanish, and French like a native. What happened next shocked everyone. The cleaning crew at Halberg International moved like ghosts through the building. Not out of malice, not out of cruelty, but out of something far more insidious: habit. They arrived after hours, pushing their carts through empty hallways, changing trash bags, wiping down conference tables, blending into the background like elevator music. Invisible people doing invisible work. It was Monday morning in downtown Fort Worth, Texas. The company's main lobby buzzed with the familiar symphony of corporate life. Shoes clacking against polished tile. People tapping urgently on phones. Voices discussing deadlines and strategies. Hands clutching coffee cups like they held the secrets to success itself. Jackson Coleman, the company's CEO, was halfway through his ritualistic walk from the parking garage to his 18th floor executive suite when something stopped him cold. A voice. But not just any voice. This one was fluent, sharp, rolling through syllables of a language he hadn't heard since his last visit to the company's Shanghai office, Mandarin. The sound froze him in place. Not because it was Mandarin, the building hosted international clients regularly, but because of who was speaking it. He glanced around, expecting to see one of the international sales representatives who might have arrived early for a meeting. Instead, his eyes found her. A woman in a burgundy janitor's uniform, her short twists pulled back into a neat ponytail, standing near the touchscreen lobby directory. She was mid-conversation with an older man in a navy jacket and thick glasses, someone who looked confused and relieved all at once. She gestured calmly, her voice warm and firm, directing him toward the elevators with the kind of confidence that only comes from true fluency. Jackson narrowed his eyes. He'd seen her before countless times, actually. Passing through the halls after his late meetings, always polite, always quiet, never making eye contact unless directly spoken to. He didn't even know her name, but here she was, effortlessly translating and explaining building logistics in a language most Americans couldn't even pronounce correctly. He took a slow step forward, drawn by curiosity. As he got closer, she wrapped up the Mandarin conversation with a respectful bow. Then, as if switching radio stations, she turned toward a delivery man holding a clipboard. "Donde necesita café me," she said fluidly, switching into Spanish. The delivery man blinked, clearly startled but grateful. "Sí, gracias." Then, just as casually, she turned to a vendor standing nearby, looking confused at a set of mislabeled boxes. "Dietzmoor, Kel. Est le marquage de la conference room B?" she asked him, in French, pointing with a faint smile. Jackson's jaw clenched slightly, not from anger, but from something else entirely, something tighter, a pinch of guilt that hit him like a physical blow. Here he was, a man who'd worked in global logistics for over 2 decades, who'd led international expansions, hired professional translators, built entire cross-cultural training programs. Yet the most linguistically gifted person he'd encountered in months had been scrubbing toilets just 2 floors below his office. He stepped forward, more curious than commanding. "Excuse me." She turned toward him, startled but composed. There was no fear in her eyes, just that careful politeness of someone who'd learned to navigate spaces where they weren't expected to belong. "Yes, sir." He smiled faintly, still processing what he'd just witnessed. That was Mandarin, right? "Yes, sir, you speak it fluently." "Yes, and Spanish." "French." She nodded simply. "Also, Portuguese, German, Arabic, Italian, Swahili, and I read Latin, but I don't really count that." He blinked. The words hit him like a series of small explosions. "You're telling me you speak 9 languages?" "Yes, sir." There was no pride in her tone, no arrogance, no desire to impress. Just truth, delivered straight as a level beam. He stared at her for a long moment, trying to catch up to the reality that a janitor in his building, a woman who mopped floors in silence every night, was essentially a walking United Nations. "What's your name?" he asked finally. "Diana Waters." "Miss Waters, are you free for a few minutes?" Her brow raised slightly. "Now, yes. I'd like to talk to you in my office." He noticed the look that crossed her face, not fear exactly, but that built-in reflex people develop when they're used to being ignored or underestimated. That hesitation of someone who'd learned not to expect good things from unexpected invitations. She slowly nodded. "All right." He pressed the elevator button, holding the door open as she stepped inside. The polished steel reflected both of their faces, the CEO in his tailored suit, the janitor in her burgundy uniform, 2 worlds colliding in a space between floors. Inside the lift, silence settled for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice cutting through the quiet. "I've worked here for 13 years. The words came suddenly, as they rose toward the executive floor. "Never thought I'd be invited up." He turned toward her, seeing something in her expression he'd never noticed before. You might be surprised how quickly things can change, but he had no idea just how much was about to change. Not for her, not for him, not for anyone in that building. The elevator dinged. Diana stepped out first, her shoes silent on the polished wood floor of the executive hallway. The air up here was different. It smelled like citrus and leather. Money, if you had to put a cent on it. Jackson's assistant glanced up, wide-eyed at the sight of Diana beside him. He didn't explain, just nodded for her to let them through. Once inside his glass-walled office, he gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please, sit." She sat carefully, folding her hands in her lap, her eyes moving slowly across the room. She wasn't impressed, just observant. Taking it all in with the quiet attention of someone who'd spent years watching from the margins. A large world map hung behind him, each country dotted with colored pins marking their global operations. On the side table sat a tray of espresso cups, a photo of his 2 daughters, and a dusty award from a trade conference in Brussels. Jackson sat across from her, leaning forward slightly. "So, Diana, I'm going to be honest. I didn't expect to have this conversation today." She gave a small nod, her posture still, her face unreadable. "But I just heard you speak 3 languages like you were flipping light switches, and I need to understand something." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "How does someone like you end up working here? Cleaning floors?" For a second, she didn't answer. Her eyes flicked toward the window, then back to him. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "You got time?" For the truth, I wouldn't have asked otherwise. She sighed, rubbing her palms together as if warming up the words. "All right then." What came next was a story that would change everything Jackson thought he knew about the people working in his building. "I was born in Toledo, Ohio. Only child. My dad was a pipe fitter, my mum, a nurse's aide. They didn't have much, but they worked hard. Pushed education like it was religion." Her voice carried the weight of memory. "I got a full ride to Kent State, majored in linguistics. Was halfway through a master's when my mother got sick." She paused, and in that silence, Jackson could almost see the moment when her life took a different turn. "I came home to take care of her. Then my dad passed from a stroke 6 months later. Everything fell apart after that." She tilted her head slightly, as if rewinding the memories before speaking them. "I had a baby, no money, no partner who stuck around, so I worked whatever I could find, grocery stores, nursing homes, temp jobs. Eventually, a custodial supervisor here offered me night hours. It let me pick up my daughter from school, pay the light bill. That's how I got here." Jackson watched her, not blinking, just listening. The story unfolded like a map of choices that weren't really choices at all. "But the languages," she continued. "I didn't stop learning. I borrowed textbooks, listened to recordings, read newspapers in 5 different tongues just to stay sharp. It's what I do. It's the only thing I do that makes me feel like I still matter." Her voice didn't waver. It wasn't rehearsed or poetic, just plain truth, delivered without self-pity or drama. "Most people never asked," she added quietly. "They saw the uniform and assumed." That last word hung in the air like smoke. Assumed. Jackson sat back in his chair, feeling the weight of her story settle into his chest like a stone. Diana Waters was brilliant. That much was obvious now, but she wasn't asking for pity or even for a handout. She was simply giving him the truth, clean and clear, and a little heartbreaking. "You ever think about doing anything else?" he asked. She gave a small shrug. "Sometimes, but it's hard to dream when your rent's due." Silence fell again, but it was different now, denser, full of something unspoken but powerful. Jackson reached for his notebook and jotted down a few lines. "What are you writing?" she asked, her voice still calm but curious now. He looked up at her. "Ideas." But one idea in particular was already forming in his head. And it wasn't small. The conversation stuck with him all day. Even during budget reviews and vendor calls, Jackson Coleman's mind kept circling back to that morning. To Diana Waters, to her calm voice and the quiet way she'd listed 9 languages like they were nothing special. That kind of fluency didn't just happen. It took years of discipline, curiosity, and heart. Around 3:45 p.m., he left the executive floor and rode the elevator down to the building's service level. He wanted to see something for himself. Down there, the air was warmer, the walls off-white, and scuffed from years of carts and boots. He passed maintenance crews on break, supply rooms stacked with bottled water and cleaning supplies, until he finally reached the janitorial storage area. He spotted Diana through the open door, methodically, restocking microfiber cloths on a metal shelf. "Mind if I bother you again?" he asked, stepping inside. She turned, slightly startled. "You came down here," he smiled. "Couldn't stop thinking about our talk. Listen, I have a favor to ask." She wiped her hands on her shirt. "What kind of favor?" "There's a meeting upstairs. A group from the snow polo office came in early, and our translator cancelled last minute. Can you help?" She hesitated for only a second. "Portuguese? Yes, I can do that." Minutes later, they were in conference room for C. 4 Brazilian executives sat awkwardly around the table, checking their phones, clearly frustrated by the communication barrier. Diana stepped in quietly, nodded respectfully, and began speaking. In smooth, confident Portuguese. Jackson watched as the entire room shifted. Shoulders relaxed, eye contact sharpened. She wasn't just translating words, she was bridging cultures, making people feel seen and understood. When one of the visitors cracked a joke in Portuguese, Diana responded with a laugh and a return joke. That had them all chuckling. Jackson didn't understand a word, but he understood connection. He understood the magic of being truly heard. After 20 minutes, the meeting wrapped. One of the executives turned to him and said in English, "She's better than anyone we've worked with this year. Where did you find her?" Jackson looked at Diana, who was already quietly stacking empty cups on a tray, preparing to return to her other duties. "Right here," he said simply. Back in the hallway, he caught up with her. "You ever do professional translation before?" She shook her head. "Just helped folks out in hospitals, government offices, things like that. No certificate. No time for school. My daughter needed me more." Jackson nodded. "And where is she now?" Diana's face softened. "She's 26, a nurse in Tempe. Paid for school herself. Stubborn like her mama." They both smiled, and for a moment, it didn't feel like CEO and janitor. Just 2 people talking about life. About the choices that shape us. They returned to the service level, where Diana clocked back in. She had 2 more floors to clean before shift change. But before she left, she said something that would stick with him. "I didn't do anything special today." He looked at her, eyebrows raised. "That's not how it looked to me." She gave him a small smile and walked off. pushing her cart toward the elevators. That night, Jackson sat in his car for a long time before driving home. He thought about everything: the pressure to grow the company, the investor meetings, the endless discussions about diversity and untapped talent. All this time, they'd been looking outside, recruiting globally, searching for new blood. But sometimes, the gold is already in your backyard, and once you realize that, the real question becomes, what are you going to do about it? The next morning, Diana's badge beeped at the wrong time. She had just finished wiping down the east lobby when her supervisor, Ray, tapped her on the shoulder, with a look that wasn't exactly annoyed, but wasn't normal either. "Hey, Diana. Mr. Coleman asked to see you again." She blinked. "Did I do something wrong?" Ray shook his head. "He didn't say, just told me to send you up." She cleaned her hands on a towel and followed the same path she'd taken the day before. Only this time, everyone in the building seemed to notice her. People she passed looked up, some whispered. One of the receptionists even gave her a polite smile, like she knew something Diana didn't. When she walked into the executive suite, Jackson stood near the window, sipping black coffee and staring out at the skyline. "Come in," he said, not turning around yet. She stood quietly by the door until he faced her. "I've been thinking," he said, placing his mug on a coaster, "about talent waste, about how many people never get a shot, not because they're not good enough, but because nobody looks twice." Diana said nothing. She didn't trust easy praise. She'd seen too many people talk big and do little. "I want to create a new position," he continued. "One that didn't exist before. Something this company badly needs, even if we didn't know it." She furrowed her brow. "For what?" "Cultural liaison for international affairs. Someone who can speak the languages, read between the lines, handle visitors, vendors, documents, all the global touchpoints we're constantly fumbling through." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You're qualified. Probably more than most of the people in our leadership team. Honestly, you've already proved you can handle it with grace, patience, and intelligence." She stared at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "This real as it gets. I don't have a college degree. You have something better. Lived experience, commitment, and fluency in 9 languages. You think I care about a piece of paper?" She shifted her weight, still unsure. "Why me?" He looked directly at her. "Because I watched you solve 3 problems in 3 languages before 9 a.m. yesterday. And because I'm tired of walking past people like you, people doing twice the work for half the credit." Diana crossed her arms. "You know what people are going to say, I don't care." She stared at him for a long moment, then let out a slow breath. "I've never had an office job, never had a title. You'll learn fast. I don't have a wardrobe for this kind of thing. I'll have HR send a clothing stipend." She gave a dry chuckle. "You thought of everything, huh? I'm trying." A long pause stretched between them. Then Diana asked softly, "What about my shift downstairs?" "Who replaces me?" Jackson smiled. "We'll find someone. But no one can replace you." For a long time, neither of them spoke. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "You sure this isn't some kind of favor?" He shook his head. "This is overdue. Recognition." She bit her lip, eyes glistening, but she blinked the tears away before they fell. "All right then," she said, voice firm. "Let's see what I can do." He extended his hand. She shook it. It wasn't just a handshake, it was history being rewritten, but what neither of them expected was how everyone else in the building would react. By Wednesday, the news had traveled faster than the elevators. Diana Waters, the janitor from the night shift, had been promoted to an executive-level position. Nobody knew the full story, just whispers that she spoke a bunch of languages. That the CEO himself had chosen her, that she might have some kind of secret background. Maybe government work, maybe even undercover. The gossip bounced from cubicle to conference room. Some folks were curious. Some smiled and said, "Good for her," but not everyone was clapping. In the staff lounge, 2 marketing assistants leaned close over their salads. "I'm just saying," one whispered. "I have a master's in international business." and I've been waiting 2 years for a promotion. This lady was scrubbing urinals last week. Her friend shrugged. Maybe she knows something we don't. Oh, please, it's Coleman trying to look progressive. Check a box. That same energy trickled into boardrooms and Slack messages. Quiet resentment mixed with confusion. People weren't used to upward moves coming from outside the usual ladder. Diana felt it the second. She stepped into her new office on the 12th floor. It was modest, just a desk, a plant, and a computer she hadn't touched yet. But to her, it looked like another planet. When HR finished onboarding her, she asked if she could keep the night's uniform. Not to wear, just to remind herself. That afternoon, she met with Vincent, head of international operations. He walked in with a clipboard and tight eyes, didn't shake her hand, didn't sit. So you're the new liaison, he said, like it was a joke. Wrapped in politeness, Diana looked up. That's what I'm told. You have experience in corporate environments. She smiled. Only from the outside looking in. He didn't laugh. I've got reports from Italy, contracts from our Dubai partners, and an entire vendor issue in snow polo. Think you can manage that? She stood up. I'll need a few hours to review, but yes. Vincent dropped the folder on her desk and walked out. Later that night, Jackson stopped by her office. How's day one? She exhaled, leaned back in her chair. I've had worse, he smiled. Vincent give you a hard time? He doesn't scare me. I figured. She paused, then added, but, can I ask you something? Anything. Why now? Why me? You could have just given me a bonus and kept moving. He leaned against the doorframe. Because I saw myself in you. She raised an eyebrow. You were a janitor. No, but I was overlooked a lot. I came from nothing. My dad fixed cars in a town no one visits. I worked 3 jobs through college. People thought I didn't belong in rooms like this. Diana nodded slowly. Now you're the one deciding who gets in. He nodded back. Exactly. There was a beat of silence before Diana looked down at the file on her desk. I'll be honest, I'm nervous. Good, means you care. She looked up again. There's going to be people who hate this. They'll get over it, or they won't. Either way, we're moving forward. Jackson stood straight. You have a story, Diana, a real one, and now you've got a platform. Then he turned to leave. As the door clicked behind him, Diana looked around her office. She remembered the years she'd cried in bathroom stalls during lunch breaks. The nights she came home with aching feet and barely enough energy to heat up soup. The birthdays she missed. The promotions she watched go to people who never even said, good morning. She opened her desk drawer and placed the old janitor badge inside. Not to forget, to remember exactly what it took to get here. But this story wasn't just hers anymore, and the spotlight was about to grow much brighter by the end of the week. Diana's nameplate was mounted outside her office. Black letters on brushed steel. Diana Waters, Cultural Liaison, International Affairs. It looked official, clean, permanent. Word had gotten out formally this time. The company-wide email hit inboxes Friday morning, sent by Jackson himself. It was short, clear, and carried weight. He explained her role, her background, and more importantly, her value. He didn't frame it as charity or a feel-good gesture. He made it clear she was the best person for the job, period. But that didn't stop the noise. Some managers grumbled under their breath. Others softened up once they saw her in action. She navigated conversations with foreign clients better than their expensive software. She corrected mistranslations in old contracts that had cost them money for years, and she never showed off. She just worked quietly, smoothly, better than anyone had expected. On Monday, Diana was asked to join a meeting with a delegation from Morocco. The company's North African expansion had been stuck for months over miscommunication and mistrust. She walked into the room in a soft beige blazer, sat at the table, and introduced herself in fluent Moroccan Arabic. The room changed. You could feel it. The shift. People leaned in. They listened. Because when someone speaks your language, you don't just hear words, you hear respect. After the meeting, one of the Moroccan partners approached her privately. He touched his chest. Gently, a traditional sign of gratitude. "No one's ever done that for us," he said. "Not in our language, not like that." Diana nodded. "You matter, that's all." By midweek, Jackson made another move. He renamed the company's main training room, where all new hires gathered for orientation, and where mid-level leaders held workshops. The plaque outside the door was taken down. In its place, the Waters Room, don't no big announcement, no party, just a quiet sign and a shift that meant more than flowers or cake ever could. Later that afternoon, Jackson stood outside the room, watching as a new group of interns filed in. He heard one of them whisper, "Who's Waters?" A senior staff member answered, "She's someone who reminded this place that greatness doesn't always come in a suit." That same day, Diana found a sealed envelope on her desk. No return address, just her name, handwritten in block letters. Inside was a note. "I used to think I'd be invisible forever. But today I stood a little taller because of you. Thank you." No signature, just proof that people were watching. People who needed to see what was possible. Diana sat there, staring at the words, her throat tightening. She didn't cry, she didn't need to, because that was the moment she realized. This wasn't just a job, it was a door. But not every door stays open without a fight, and someone was already planning to push back. The backlash didn't take long to show its face. Late Thursday, Diana was called into a meeting, not by Jackson, but by someone higher up. Alina Cross, a senior board member who'd flown in from Dallas. She'd been with the company since the 90s. Sharp suits, sharper tongue. Diana walked into the small conference room on the 17th floor, where Alina waited with a stack of papers and a flat stare. "Have a seat," she said, without looking up. Diana sat. Alina tapped her pen twice. "So, Miss Waters, I've reviewed your file. You have no college degree, no previous corporate training, and no management certifications." Diana didn't flinch. "That's correct." Alina folded her hands. "You were a janitor here 3 weeks ago." "I was." She leaned back in her chair. "Help me understand how someone with your background is now handling high-level international affairs." Diana held her gaze. "Because I speak the languages. I understand the cultures. I've already fixed 2 vendor contracts and cleared a 3-month delay in our Morocco deal. I also helped secure a verbal agreement with our Brazilian partners that legal is finalizing next week." Alina pursed her lips. "You think this company should be run on instinct and charm?" Diana smiled slightly. "No, ma'am. I think it should be run on results." Alina blinked. That was the first time Diana had seen her hesitate. "I don't need to be liked," Diana added, "but I do need to be useful. And I am." Alina stood and slowly closed the folder. "You're a gamble. I'm used to that," Diana said quietly. "My entire life's been one." When the meeting ended, Diana didn't return to her office right away. She walked out of the building and sat on a bench across the street, staring at the glass tower she now worked in. So many years. She had walked past that building wearing the same uniform, carrying cleaning supplies, wondering if anyone saw her. Now they all did, and some didn't like it. She pulled out her phone and called her daughter. "Hey, Ma," her daughter answered. "Everything okay?" Diana hesitated, then nodded to herself. "Yeah, just needed to hear your voice." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." They talked for a few minutes, mostly about nothing. Groceries, her daughter's dog, a new movie she wanted to watch. But just hearing her laugh steadied Diana. After they hung up, she sat in silence. Then she stood up, walked back across the street, and rode the elevator to her floor. By the next morning, word of the Alina Cross meeting had somehow spread, and to everyone's surprise, Diana didn't back down. She showed up early, spoke at a team meeting, took a call with the German office without needing a translator. Calm, sharp, unbothered. That same day, a handwritten note appeared on the whiteboard outside her office. "We see you." No name. Just 3 words that meant the world. In the following weeks, something strange happened. People started coming to her, not just for translation, but for advice, guidance, confidence. She became the person people went to before they pitched an idea. She'd sit with interns and give them tips before big presentations, and she never talked down to anyone. One of the interns, a shy Vietnamese kid named Ben, asked her, "How did you learn all those languages?" She smiled. "One word at a time. Same way you will." Diana wasn't just doing her job, she was changing the culture. One afternoon, Jackson joined her for coffee in the break room. "Been hearing good things," he said. She sipped from her cup. "Been trying to ignore the bad ones. You're making waves." She looked at him. "That, a good thing?" He smiled. "Around here, it means you're doing something right." They stood in silence for a moment. "You know," he added, "I've been thinking about starting a training program for internal talent, especially folks working non-desk roles. There's probably more Dianas in this building." She nodded. "There are, they just haven't been seen yet." He looked at her. "Want to help me build it?" She smiled. "Already started in my head." By month's end, the pilot program launched. A new initiative called Voices Within, designed to give workers across departments access to language training, leadership, mentoring, and visibility across divisions. It was Diana's idea, and it caught fire. Eventually, she was invited to speak at a logistics leadership summit in Cincinnati, where she told her story. Not as a motivational tale, but as a reality check. "I was never just a janitor," she said to the crowd. "I was fluent, I was capable, I was ready, but nobody ever looked long enough to see it. So the next time you pass someone without a title, ask yourself, what are you really missing?" The room was silent, and then it stood in full applause. On her way out, a young man approached her with tears in his eyes. "My mum's a housekeeper," he said, "and she speaks 5 languages. I used to be embarrassed to say that." Diana touched his arm. "Don't ever be ashamed of where you come from. The only thing to be ashamed of is staying blind to brilliance." She walked out of that building taller than she ever had in her life. Not because of the applause, not because of the promotion, but because she hadn't changed who she was to fit the role. She'd brought herself every layer of her story, with her dot, and that made all the difference. Here's what I want you to remember from Diana's story. Never assume you know someone's worth based on what they wear, where they work, or what their resume says. Talent has no dress code. Intelligence doesn't need permission. And brilliance can walk past you wearing a name tag, holding a mop. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored, keep going. The right person will see you. And when they do, don't be afraid to take that seat at the table. Better yet, bring a few more chairs with you. This is Black Frame Stories, reminding you that the most extraordinary people are often hiding in the most ordinary places. The question is, are you paying attention?